Now, before I go on any more, going into people from Sudan, we do have our people scattered amongst all nations. So yeah, some of our people scattered amongst them, but predominantly them Sudanese go back to the Hamites. And our people was always fighting against them. Like this story right here, I read the previous video with Samson. We had another scripture. Let me see, we're going to. David fought Goliath, that story. Goliath was talking shit, and then he blasphemed the name of the Most High. That's in the book of 1 Samuel. I'm going to just read on down through this. Book of 1 Samuel, chapter 17 and verse 8. Now it says, and he stood and cried unto the armies of Israel and said unto them, why are you come out to set your battle in array? Am I not a Philistine, and ye servants to Saul? Because they knew the difference back then. Yeah, they was all dark skinned, but they knew the different. They knew the different people though. They knew who Israel was. Now it says, choose you a man for you, and let him come down to me. If he be able to fight with me and to kill me, then will we be your servants. Which this gonna happen any damn way, because these nations they gonna go into captivity under us. Now it says, but if I prevail against him and kill him, then shall ye be our servants and serve us. And the Philistines said, I defy the armies of Israel this day. Give me a man that we may fight together. When Saul and all Israel heard those words of the Philistines, they were dismayed and greatly afraid, because they were spooked, they were shook. Now, verse 12 it says, now when David was the son of that Ephrathite of Bethlehem, Judah, whose name was Jesse, and he had 8 sons, and a man went among the men from an old man in the days of Saul. And the 3 elder sons of Jesse went and followed Saul to the battle. And the names of the 3 sons that went to the battle were Eliab, firstborn, next unto him, Abinadab, and the third Shammah. And David was the youngest. And the 3 elders followed Saul. But David went and returned from Saul to feed his father's sheep at Bethlehem. And it says, which is all spiritual, because if you can perceive it, that's who Peter is. That's why Peter was always with Yahweh Shai when he was on the scene. He was always telling him, feed my sheep. Anyway, I ain't gonna get into that. Now it says in 16, and the Philistines drew near morning and evening and presented themselves 40 days. Now verse 17, and Jesse said unto David his son, take now for thy brother an ephah of this parched corn, and these 10 loaves, and run to the camp to thy brethren, and carry these 10 cheeses unto the captain of the 1,000, and look how thy brethren fear, and take their pledge. Now Saul and they and all the men of Israel were in the valley of Elah, fighting with the Philistines. And our people was always like that. Even when I was down in Florida, I used to always get into it, them damn Hamites. So it was all through the spirit, though. That's how it was. Now verse 20 it says, and David rose up early in the morning and left the sheep with a keeper, and took and went as Jesse had commanded him, and he came to the trench as the host was going forth to the fight, and shouted for the battle. For Israel and the Philistines, some people pronounce it that way, had put a battle in array, army against army, and David left his carriage in the hand of the keeper of the carriage, and ran into the army, and came and saluted his brethren. And as he had talked with them, behold, there came up the champion, the Philistine of Gath, Goliath by name, out of the armies of the Philistines, and spake according to the same words. And David heard them. And the men of Israel went, and they saw the man, fled from him, and they were so afraid. And the man of Israel said, have you seen this man that has come up? Because, hey, just like back then, how tall he was, you got a lot of them that's real tall. Hey, some of them like that now. I've seen some met some person be real tall, 7 feet 1 and shit, 7 feet 2, 7 feet 3. but their posture is way different than ours. That's how you can kind of see the difference between us on one aspect. But like the scripture say, you are the salt of the earth. They don't got no salt. Now it says, surely to devour Israel, and see come up, and it shall be that the man who killeth him, the king will enrich him with great riches, and will give him his daughter, and make his father's house free in Israel. And David spoke to the man that stood by him, saying, what shall be done to the man that killed this Philistine, and take away reproach from Israel? For who is the uncircumcised Philistine? That's a bad thing to be uncircumcised too. That's how you know who is who as well as today. Because our people still circumcise the newborn baby boys. That's just something that's been done from generation to generation. If you ain't been circumcised, you better go get your shit circumcised. And for biblical reasons and for health reasons. Now it says that he should defy the armies of the living power. And the people answered him after this manner, saying, so shall it be done to the man that killeth him. And Eliab, his eldest brother, heard when he spake unto the man, and Eliab's anger was kindled against David, and said, why camest thou hither? And with whom hast thou left the few sheep in the wilderness? I know thy pride and the naughtiness of thine heart, for thou art come down, that thou mightest see the battle. And David said, what have I now done? Is there not a cause? And he turned from him toward another and spake after the same manner. And the people answered him again after the former manner. Now it says, and when the words were heard which David spoke, they rehearsed them before Saul. And he sent for him. And David said unto Saul, let no man's heart fail because of him. Thy servant will go and fight with this Philistine. And Saul said unto David, thou art not able to go against the Philistine to fight with him, for thou art but a youth, and he a man of war from his youth. And David said unto Saul, thy servant keep his father's sheep. There came a lion and a bear, and took a lamb out of the flock. And you got to be a strong man to go deal with a lion and a bear, because them ain't no weak creatures. Now it says, and I went out after him and smote him, which smoked his knee, killed him. And it says, and delivered it out of his mouth. When he arose against me, I caught him by his beard, and smote him and slew him. It said, the servant slew both the lion and the bear, and this uncircumcised Philistine shall be as one of them. Because them Hamites, they so bugged out. The man won't get circumcised, but they get the woman to go get circumcised. That's how bugged out they are. Now it says, the servant slew both the lion and the bear, and this uncircumcised Philistine shall be as one of them, seeing he had defied the armies of the living power. David said, moreover, the Lord Yahweh that delivered me out of the paw of the lion, out of the paw of the bear, he will deliver me out of the hand of the Philistine. And Saul said unto David, go, and the Lord be with thee. And Saul armed David with his armor, and he put a helmet of brass upon his head. He also armed him with a coat of mail. It says, and David girded his sword upon his armor, and he essayed to go, for he had not proved it. And David said unto Saul, I cannot go with these, for I have not proved it. Basically, he ain't trained in it. Because one thing about that warfare is, you wearing all that heavy ass shit, you can't maneuver like you want to, so you gotta, take some of that stuff off, move lightweight. Now it says, and David put them off him, and he took his staff in his hand, and chose them 5 smooth stones out of the brook, and put them in the shepherd's bag, which he had even in the script. And a sling was in his hand, and he drew near to the Philistine. Now I ain't gonna read the rest of that story, I ain't want to stretch this video out too long, but you know what happened to Goliath. He was talking shit, and he got took out. He got smoked like that bear and that lion. And now the Most High, he's smoking these Philistines again. But this time he hitting them with them plagues though. They had the locusts swarming over there, messing up the crops. Now the rain came in, all the dried up land. It was all dry and hot. And everything all muddied up and shit and covered up in water. And he forget about these Hamites, man. He was against some Amalekites from generation to generation. Same with these damn Hamites. I'm going to go into some more videos. I'm going to just show how this wrath point out, man. Business is closing down, stuff's slowing up. This right here says NYC reimagined. Say fleeing the Big Apple, because a lot of people leaving New York. Like up here in Ohio, a lot of people don't left from New York and came here. this place through, man. That's why they doing that shit. That Big Apple, big city bullshit. You know,
When all this is over, spoiler alert, it won't be the new.
Hey, hold on, let me pause that real quick. Hey, you're right. It won't be old. This shit just going to get. It's going to circle the drain. That's what's about to go down. No. It's in the book of Job, chapter 14, verse 4. It said, "Who can bring a clean thing out of an unclean thing? No one. Ain't nobody. Hey, this place right here, they ain't clean this shit up. This place was founded on the slaughter of our forefathers, man. So wait, you think the Most High forgot about that? Yeah. In verse 5 it says, "Seeing his days are determined, the number of his months are with thee. Thou hast appointed his bounds that he cannot pass." So Esau, they're going to get to a certain point, and then that's a wrap for their ass. I'm going to let this play some more.
Emerge. What to expect? Let's ask the author of Everyone's Crazy Except You and Me, and I'm not so sure about you, America's favorite contrarian cuts loose. It's RT contributor and legal and media analyst Lionel. Counselor, legally speaking, when there is a virus, can employers require employees to come back to the workspace?
Fascinating question. Holland, I'm going to give you the answer to every single legal question that has ever been asked and ever will be asked. You can wow your friends at cocktail parties with this. The answer to every legal question is, it depends. It depends upon the situation. It depends upon supporting legislation. It depends upon safety. It depends upon, can an owner of a business order you to take a vaccine? The owner of the business order you to take a vaccine if it's contrary to your religion. Can you fire the person if they refuse to take a vaccine because your insurance rates will go up? And how do these rights and privileges merge? So we don't know anything yet. And by the way, this word new normal, lose that. It's not new, it's not normal, it's almost a metastatic ooze that this is transmogrifying into. Because you're not going to recognize anything within the next 6 months.
Yeah, hey, and stuff changing that fucking quick though. And the Most High, he doing that, man. He's speeding this stuff up. But yeah, I was going to pull this out of the book of Job. Let me get this real quick. It's in the book of Matthew, chapter 24, verse 22, it says. But yeah, I'm going to start at 21. Now it says, "For then shall be great tribulation." And that's what's going on right now. Great tribulation is just going to get even worse. Now it says, "Shall be great tribulation such as was not since the beginning of the world to this time, no, nor ever shall be." It says, "And except those days shall be shortened, there shall no flesh be saved. But for the elect's sake, those days are shortened." And that's why some people, they be like, "Damn, the day just flew by. A time and flying by." That's, hey, the Most High, he control the time. He's speeding the time up. And that's what's going on right now. So, like he say, in these next 6 months, Crazy how the year started off, man. Man.
About lost jobs. All the
Like, see, I can laugh. You can laugh at this stuff, because we know. I know when I first really started finding out this information and really getting heavy into the scriptures like that. I thought shit was finna go down the next month. So I'm like, oh man, let me hurry and tighten up. I was fasting 2-3 days in a row doing all type of junk. So, you know, hey, it was a long periodic thing though. Now the scriptures say, though it tarried, wait for it. So it wasn't really gonna happen no next month. Just because, you know, certain men, they find out about the scriptures or whatever, and then they start teaching and getting built up. And a lot of Akim thought like that, because, hey, when you find out what's going on, you realize how serious and severe it is to do what you're supposed to do and get yourself right before the judgment comes. So the Most High, as long as suffering, He gave us time to get ourselves right, get built up, help edify other Akim, and warn people on top of that. So can't nobody say, oh, I ain't here, but I ain't know about that. I ain't know the scriptures really meant that.
telecommuting has many employees saying